Good evening. This is Reality Check. I know the entire country is waiting to see what exactly the ICJ is going to say in the case of Kulbhushan Jadhav, and we will, of course, find that out tomorrow, and we are going to be discussing it, I'm sure, at great length tomorrow evening. But today I'm going to try and bring your attention to a slightly different question. We spend a lot of time here, especially on television channels, discussing Pakistan, and naturally it's an emotional issue and a lot of people spend a lot of attention on that. But frankly, Pakistan is not really either a strategic competitor or a challenge or even a threat for India. For India, at our level, at our stature on the global stage, the real country we should be keeping a close eye on is China. And this is a week where a very major conference was held, which perhaps didn't get quite the attention that it should have, which was the Belt Road Initiative that China is talking about, One Belt, One Road, as it used to be called. India didn't go. India boycotted it because it said there were questions of national interest that are involved out there. Today on this program, over the next 30 minutes, we've got some of the top foreign policy experts and also two really seasoned political voices joining us to help us understand what exactly the stakes are for India when it comes to this. What is it that China is trying to do? How should India handle it? Because this could arguably be one of the most important strategic questions for India to deal with over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. We really need to pay some attention and to think about this closely. Now, I'm just going to very briefly start by giving you a sort of a recap, a 2-minute version, if you like, as to what this is about and why it should matter to us. Now, here's the map. This is the map that the Chinese put forward on One Belt, One Road, as they used to call it, or the Border Road Initiative that they're saying it right now. Sorry, the Belt Road Initiative, I'm just saying right now. See how it is. You need to pay a lot more attention than even that. So this is really what the Chinese are trying to do. Interestingly, that road which is going all the way through, that actually is the belt. It's slightly confusing, I know. There's a maritime Silk Road that the Chinese have put forward, and that is the sea lane. It goes there, and you can see that sometimes they mention Kolkata as part of that. That's a maritime Silk Road. And in the Silk Road economic belt is a road that is transitioning. And a very important part of that is what actually then comes down, wends its way down into Pakistan. And that is of particular interest to us. And that's what India has been really exercised about. Why has India been exercised about this? So if you just zoom in on that Pakistan part of it, India is upset about this because that's going through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and we are correctly saying that the Chinese have no business in building a road through what is disputed territory at best, if you call it from a Pakistan point of view. And from our position, it's very much part of India. And the second thing is that's then going to go all the way down to Gwadar. The other issues also which are particularly important from an Indian point of view when it comes to what that particular CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, is going to do for Pakistan itself. If you look at some of the leaks that have come out, notably from Dawn, on what the eventual game is, it virtually seems to be making Pakistan an economic annexee of China. And I'm going to come to that. Some of the things that are laid down there are massive. Pakistan almost being divided into zones. There's an industrial and a tourism zone there at the bottom of Pakistan, and there are certain bits like Balochistan or the northwest frontier province, those sort of areas which are designated for mining. Then there's a textile belt in there somewhere. There's going to be a fiber optic cable which is going to be used for the dissemination of Chinese culture all through Pakistan. Many in Pakistan are slightly concerned. It's sounding vaguely colonial out here. And from an Indian point of view, naturally there will be questions also. If China becomes so closely intertwined within Pakistan, is that good for us? Is it bad for us? Now that's one part of it. The second part of it is a very big strategic question that needs to be looked at. Why is China even looking at this entire exercise? Well, it's partly because, I'm going to bring that map back up, it's because of this, the Malacca Straits. It's the Chinese Malacca Straits dilemma. This particular choke point could always have been choked by India or by the United States, and certainly by both of them acting in concert, especially if you throw the Japanese in as well. So China's been wanting to get out of this. This is why they want to come into the Indian Ocean. From an Indian point of view, though, that has implications, because what the Chinese have then come out and done is they've got bases potentially coming up in Burma, bases potentially coming up in Sri Lanka. They do have a base coming up in Djibouti, and of course that base in Gwadar in Pakistan. What does that mean? It means India's getting encircled. India's tried to fight back. India's pushed back. They're looking at, of course, there's Andaman and Nicobars right next to the Malacca Straits. There's Lakshadweep. We're talking about bases in Seychelles and Mauritius and the rest of it. But once the One Belt, One Road really rolls itself out and that road comes down running through Pakistan, there are slight questions or concerns about India being encircled. And that's why I said this is a really big strategic channel which deserves a lot of thinking. So joining us now, some of the top strategic thinkers we could find to help us understand this. Mohan Guruswamy is the chairman of the Center for Policy Alternatives, close analyst of everything that's been happening in China, as indeed is Brahma Chelani, who's with us, G. Parthasarthi with us as well, Manish Tiwari joining us, and GVL Narasimha Rao joining us from the BJP. And I hope all of you can now hear me loud and clear. GVL, if I can come to you, I'm going to come to the broader strategic part in just a couple of minutes. Let's just finish the Pakistan part out, because Pakistan very much in the headlines right now. We're waiting to see what the ICJ does. India did not go for this, for this big Chinese convention that took place. 29, 30 other countries came, and Chinese said it is a very big success. And some snarky Chinese editorials coming in that, well, India's only, damaging itself by not showing up for this. Why didn't the government go? Was it essentially about Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and, what the CPEC might mean for us? Or were there other strategic reasons?
No, I think, Vikram, the principal reservation to us is because of the sovereignty issues involved, because the CPEC, which forms a part of the OBOR, is actually, it passes through the POK region, Gilgit-Baltistan, and even Pakistan doesn't consider them to be a part of Pakistan. So how can China decide on its own to include these areas under the project without approval from India? So certainly this is something that this has been a consistent position that we have adopted. Every time China tried to really indulge in some kind of activity in the POK and Gilgit-Baltistan region, going back to 69 Karakoram highway building to 1983 when Kunjera Pass was being opened, we had objected, India had objected to it. I think over the past decades, India, we have always objected to China getting involved in the POK region, and that we cannot really deviate from that position. So certainly our national interests, our sovereign rights have been clearly affected by this. So there was no way India could attend this summit.
Okay, Manish Tiwari, so the sovereignty issues that come around the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, do you think it was that till that is settled, there was no question of India really accepting this? Or should India try and find ways of leveraging whatever is happening out here? How concerned, by the way, do you think we should be about everything that's happening on this?
Vikram, your voice is very stilted, but if I get the essence of your question, it pertains to the question of sovereignty. And I think, yes, you are absolutely correct. CPEC does violate the sovereignty of India because a substantive part of the CPEC going up to Kashgar actually passes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, areas which they have illegally occupied ever since the 26th of October 1947, when the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir was actually ceded to India by late Maharaja Hari Singh by signing an instrument of accession. But that's not really the issue. My concern is that on such a vital question of Westphalian sovereignty that is so critical to India, why is it that we were not able to carry any of the big powers along with us, and much less the big powers, even our own neighbors, except for Bhutan? Everybody has gone and attended the conference. Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, Maldives, and of course Pakistan. So therefore, the question is not that CPEC violates India's sovereignty, that it does under all circumstances. But the nimbleness and the adroitness and the deftness which our diplomacy demanded, that we should have convinced at least our neighbors and some of the big powers that this OBOR, or at least that segment of the OBOR, which is CPEC, is in clear violation of all international covenants and the position which the which India
Manish,
has
we get what
taken
you're saying.
at the
I'm
United
going to try and move
Nations,
this along
a
because we have
position
lots
which
of
was
ground.
taken between
We have
India
lots of
and
ground to cover,
Pakistan,
so I'm going to try
which
and
is
keep everyone
in
down
the
to
similar
15,
agreement.
30 seconds per comment. I get what you're saying. JVL, a very quick response to you on that before I turn to all the experts, because there's a lot of substantive ground that I want to cover today. JVL, the fact that India could not convince any of its neighbors other than Bhutan not to go.
Yeah.
Large number of other world leaders also did show up for that. Is that in some way a setback?
No, not at all. If you have seen the statement from the Minister of Sri Lanka, I think they have certainly appreciated our position. They have actually agreed with our position. So this is we have no problem with China per se. We are a part of many multilateral groupings where we have China by our side, be it the BRICS or Shanghai Cooperation Organization or whatsoever. But the reality is every nation certainly wants to protect its interests. But India, by not going there, we have not only registered a protest, I think the whole world has got to know about it, but then every country has their own interest in participating.
They all have their own interest. Manish,
in this particular
I'm turning to the
meeting.
experts now, but
Sri
Manish is
Lanka
saying
has
that every
agreed.
country will exercise their own sovereign, but it's not as if they haven't appreciated India's position. Manish, quick reply, then I want to turn to the experts.
Vikram, the difficulty with that argument is that we consider South Asia to be our near abroad. In fact, there is a certain unwritten Monroe Doctrine which we have with regard with regard to South Asia, and the difficulty is that we seem to be incapable of enforcing our will even in our neighborhood.
But we'll never be able to do it,
the
Manish.
big players on
Manish,
the table.
when have we ever been able to do it? We had the
Unfortunately,
IPF has
even
been
when
in
you
the
have a
making for a
reverse
long
string
time.
of pearls and you have
I mean, Bangladesh should not always listen to us.
Well,
Nepal certainly doesn't listen to us. Sri Lanka, we had to send the IPK. So it's not just a recent development that we have.
Was unveiled by President Xi Jinping only in 2013. So the fact remains that we should have convinced people who are going for this conference, if we were boycotting, that look, what the Chinese are doing is in clear violation of our sovereignty, and therefore we would urge you, we would request you that this principle of Westphalian sovereignty, which has been sacrosanct since the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, is something which should be respected in the case of India also.
Okay, fine. I'm just going to pause both of you just for a minute. I'm going to turn to all the others. Now, I want to get your quick take, and I'm going to request you to try and keep it slightly short. I began by outlining two reasons why India should pay a lot of attention to what is happening with, the Belt and the Road Initiative. A, Pakistan and the issues that we were just talking about going through the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. B, the broader question of what it means for Chinese encirclement of India and India's ability to push back on that. And I, first of all, just wanted to ask you, each of you, would you agree that that is perhaps the single biggest strategic question that we should be addressing, perhaps spending more time on than we are doing right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what is
And I'm somewhat surprised that we don't spend more time
I don't want to get
this.
into the politics of this, as who's right and who's wrong, because there is a continuity in Indian foreign policy. Since the beginning of this century or even earlier, we've been worried about what is called as Chinese string of pearls, emerging from Myanmar, extending to Djibouti. Right now, the latest thing is Chinese have got hold of the port they wanted for 20 years, Chok Phyu in Myanmar, meaning from the states of Malacca to our east, they have Chok Phyu already. They're looking for something in Bangladesh.
They have Gwadar in Pakistan.
They have Hambantota in Sri Lanka, which incidentally now they have an equity stake, they own it. That is why the Sri Lankan minister was so concerned. They've lost sovereignty. And what we need to project is that you are losing sovereignty. In Pakistan, as you have noted, for the first time, respected newspapers like the Dawn and the Express Tribune are questioning the wisdom, saying that they are going to get into a debt trap. Let me say this, they became so expensive they couldn't repay. The same thing is happening to Pakistan.
So in Myanmar, so hang on, what you're saying is that in Myanmar and in Sri Lanka, in both cases, the terms are so unfavorable of whatever the Chinese did, they've almost now owning those territories. They can have aircraft
absolutely, Hambantota is equity
or
there.
in Hambantota, and
same thing in Chok Phyu
as well. Okay, so this is something that needs to be communicated, and perhaps it will be. In Pakistan, by the way, for the first time, there are questions that are being asked. If you look at what all they are planning to do in Pakistan, it's virtually dividing Pakistan up into economic zones and saying it's going to be run from China. Mohan, let me come to you before I go to Brahma. In your view, how seriously should India take whatever is happening on the Belt and the Road Initiative? And would you agree with Partha here that it's one of the biggest concerns for us now, and what should be one of our top priorities for us to look at?
Well, you see, our problems with the Chinese are in the north, and and their encroachment into the Indian Ocean with new ships and nuclear submarines and new aircraft carriers. But I don't think India is a slouch. I mean, I don't think by building a port it becomes a military port. For instance, Hambantota, it's a commercial port. So is the port in Burma, which is, when it comes up, will be a commercial port. That means PLA is not going to station ships there and be there. They don't control it. It's still Sri Lankan territory, and it's a policy of Sri Lankan government which will determine whether Chinese naval ships can be based there.
You're not completely convinced by that. You're saying that in Burma, for example, they can station military ships.
No. I think let him.
No, I don't think. No, they can't. They can't. They can't. Commercial ships can land, pick up cargo, drop cargo, and go. They're operating a port. Operating a port is very different from having a base. Like they have a base in Djibouti, but the base is right next to the American base and the French base. So Djibouti will give us a base also if we want one, and pay a rent for it. But that's not the big thing. I think this business of China encircling us is exaggerated. The threat of that is exaggerated.
Okay.
India is no slouch. India is still, far more powerful than China in the Indian Ocean. And I think even on the northern sectors, I think we're quite capable of taking care of ourselves.
Okay, let me try and get a third view into this. Brahmachalani, what would be your take on this? Brahmachalani. The extent
Pakistan has been a cost-effective counterweight for China against India, and CPEC will actually strengthen that corridor and make Pakistan economically and militarily stronger vis-a-vis India as a counterweight. And certainly it opens up potential access to the Indian Ocean for China. So for India, CPEC and OBOR both carry long-term serious implications. CPEC became part of OBOR only in 2015 when President Xi Jinping visited Islamabad. Until then, the Chinese argument was that CPEC is just a trade corridor. It will have no strategic projects and is not part of OBOR. Suddenly, overnight, they made it part of OBOR, and now they're pursuing security projects in Gilgit-Baltistan in breach of international norms. Gilgit-Baltistan is a United Nations recognized disputed region. It is not like Arunachal Pradesh, which is an area only China disputes.
Okay.
And yet, if you recall, just last month, when the Dalai Lama visited Arunachal Pradesh, the Chinese were holding out threats almost on a daily basis. Now, in the case of Gilgit-Baltistan, it's not about a visit by a Chinese. It's about they undertaking strategic projects. And last weekend, they even announced 2 mega dam projects in Gilgit-Baltistan. So they are slowly and gradually using CPEC to embark on highly significant strategic projects which are going to impinge on India's long-term security.